Let's get right into it. Number 10. Fire by panic picture. This, you're cold, stranded, and your phone battery is at that cursed 2% where it won't die, but it also won't do anything useful. Now imagine being a medieval traveller who didn't have a phone, or matches, or basic insulation, and still had to avoid freezing to death. Back then, people didn't just know how to make fire, they knew how to panic their way into making fire. Rubbing sticks together wasn't a calm, Zen-like survival ritual. It was basically the prehistoric version of rage-quitting a video game, except instead of slamming a keyboard, you were violently grinding wood until it stopped being wood and became fire dust. The science behind it is still legit: friction heat, char dust ignition, and your shoulders crying afterward. The trick is that humans discovered very early on that frustration can actually produce enough energy to keep you alive. And honestly, that still checks out. Every time you try to open a jar that refuses to open, you generate enough emotional heat to power a small village. Modern survival instructors still teach this ancient method because it works even if you're stuck with nothing but 2 sticks and a steadily collapsing will to live. It's messy, exhausting, and feels like an arm workout designed by someone who hates you personally. But if you ever need to warm up in the wild, you can still rely on the oldest human instinct: get mad, rub sticks aggressively, and hope for fire before hypothermia. Number 9. Dirt as medicine. Imagine scraping your knee, looking down at the cut, and instead of reaching for antiseptic wipes, your brain goes, "Ah yes, dirt. Nature's Band-Aid." It sounds insane now, but for most of human history, tossing soil or clay onto an injury wasn't just a random caveman habit, it was a surprisingly decent survival technique. Not all dirt, of course, some dirt. The medically gifted dirt. The kind that hasn't been stepped on by livestock or peed on by anything with hooves. Ancient cultures all over the world used clay and clean soil to pull moisture out of wounds, slow bleeding, and absorb bacteria. It was basically the original antibacterial sponge, long before humans learned to invent anything more advanced than a sharp stick. And here's the creepy twist. Modern science eventually discovered that certain clays naturally contain antibiotic compounds. So it turns out Grandma wasn't being reckless, she just had geologically advanced instincts. Even today, survival experts will sometimes use bentonite clay or similar minerals when nothing else is available. It's not glamorous. You won't see it in a first aid kit next to the neon bandages and overpriced gauze. But in a pinch, the earth under your feet can literally keep your flesh from turning into a bacterial theme park. It's one of those old survival tricks that reminds you humans only exist because our ancestors kept gambling with nature and somehow won way more often than probability says they should have. Number 8. The sleep deprivation compass. Here's a fun one. Imagine wandering through a forest at night, convinced you're walking in a perfectly straight line, only to realize you've been doing a majestic, unbroken circle like a malfunctioning Roomba. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years, and early explorers noticed it long before GPS existed. Their fix? Stay awake. Stay too awake. Because the more exhausted you are, the more your brain lets your instincts take over, and weirdly enough, your primitive instincts are better at direction than your conscious mind. Sleep-deprived people rely more on unconscious environmental cues: humidity shifts, subtle slopes, wind pressure, the direction birds retreat from you, even tiny variations in temperature. It's like unlocking a low-battery survival mode where your brain stops trying to think and instead behaves like a feral animal with a migraine. Historical travelers, desert nomads, and even soldiers use this trick. Push through tiredness to sharpen instinctive navigation. And yes, it still works today, though you should never rely on it, unless your options are trust instincts or die creatively. The science behind it: your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and planning, starts taking micro-naps, leaving your older, more primal systems in charge. The result? you stop overcorrecting your course like a confused shopping cart and start following consistent direction cues. It's not glamorous. You basically become a sweaty, irritable compass with trust issues. But in a survival situation, that might be exactly what you need. Number 7. Whisper nets. Imagine sitting absolutely still in a silent forest and hearing nothing. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just an empty, unnatural quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. Ancient hunters loved this, because to them silence wasn't peaceful, it was an alarm. When animals stop making noise, it usually means something bigger, scarier, or hungrier is nearby. So early humans developed a trick: listen not for sound, but for the absence of it. They called it different things across cultures, but today survivalists just refer to it as reading the whisper net. Basically, nature constantly broadcasts information: rustling leaves, clicking bugs, bird gossip, and when that ambient noise suddenly cuts out, your ancient lizard brain goes, "Cool, something with claws is incoming." And the wild part, modern research backs this up. Animals react to predators long before humans notice anything, and their collective silence radiates outward like a sound vacuum. Detecting that shift can give you a head start of several seconds, which in survival time is basically a full presidential term. Indigenous trackers still use this ability. Soldiers are trained to recognize it, and hikers who ignore it tend to become cautionary tales. It's eerie, instinctive, and ridiculously effective. Your ears aren't listening for danger, they're listening for the moment every other creature decides they heard danger first. So yes, silence can save you, or at least warn you it's time to walk faster without looking like you're panicking. Number 6. Spit signals. Picture someone in the ancient world trekking across a desert. No maps, no water bottles, no hydration reminder app pinging them every 3 hours. Just sand, heat, and the world's least helpful horizon. One of the oldest survival tricks in this environment? Spit, yes, good old mouth juice. Travellers used it as a personal diagnostic tool to figure out whether they were seconds from passing out or still good to push forward. Here's how it worked. If you could spit, you were fine. If you couldn't, congratulations, you were entering the dehydration danger zone and needed to stop moving before your body turned into a sun-baked raisin. It sounds hilariously primitive, but it's actually shockingly accurate. Your saliva production is one of the first things your body shuts down when water levels drop, and ancient people figured that out long before anyone invented biology. Even worse, the texture of your spit told its own story. Thin and watery? Keep walking. Thick and sticky? Sit down immediately. Foamy? You're overheating and your body is filing an official complaint. Essentially, your mouth was the original smartwatch, constantly checking vital signs with 0 battery life and absolutely no touchscreen responsiveness. Modern survival experts still use this technique because it works in any climate where dehydration sneaks up on you. So the next time your mouth feels dry, remember, your body is trying to send you a push notification made entirely of spit. Number 5. The shadow clock. Imagine being lost without your phone, without a watch, and without that one friend who insists they can feel what time it is. All you've got is the sun, which is basically a giant cosmic spotlight that refuses to dim on command. Early humans solved this with a surprisingly clever and very low-tech trick, using their own shadow as a clock, not a fancy sundial, not a carved stone monolith, just their body, standing there like a confused scarecrow, measuring time with geometry they didn't even know was geometry. Here's the gist. The longer your shadow, the earlier or later in the day it is. The shorter it gets, the closer you are to noon. And by tracking how your shadow moves across the ground, ancient travellers could estimate how much daylight was left before darkness rolled in like a judgmental parent telling them to come home. The science checks out too. Because the Earth is tilted and rotating, your shadow follows a predictable arc. Even today, survival instructors teach this trick not because it's perfect, but because it's way better than guessing and ending up building shelter in the dark while raccoons judge your life choices from the bushes. Most people don't realise it, but your shadow can also help you figure out direction. Stick a marker at the tip, wait 15 minutes, mark it again, and boom, you've just recreated one of history's earliest navigation tools without needing a single functioning brain cell. Pass stand here and wait. It's simple, ancient, and surprisingly reliable. Basically, the sun does all the work while you take all the credit. Number 4. Fear mapping. You know that weird moment when you walk into an unfamiliar place and your brain instantly highlights certain corners, like they're DLC danger zones. Ancient humans survived by trusting that feeling, something modern psychology calls fear mapping. Long before floor plans existed, people mentally scanned caves, forests, and enemy villages for the spots predators or humans were most likely to hide. It's like your nervous system built an internal Google Maps, except everything is labelled probably a trap. Here's the unsettling part. This instinct still works frighteningly well. Your amygdala reads shadows, airflow, angles of entry, and even echo patterns faster than you consciously register them. Early civilizations turned this into a survival trick by teaching kids to stand still for a few seconds, read the environment, and identify ambush points before stepping further. Soldiers, hunters, and scouts all used it. Today, special forces still train this way, and hikers who don't pay attention tend to become cryptid snacks. Your brain isn't trying to freak you out, okay? Maybe it is, but mostly it's crunching thousands of microstimuli you're barely aware of. Walls that are too close, silence that feels heavy, paths that funnel you inward. All of it helps you decide where not to die. So the next time you enter a room and immediately dislike a certain corner, that's your ancient survival software pinging you with a notification labelled, "Trust me on this one." Number 3. Gut compass. Here's a disturbing thought. Your stomach might be better at navigating danger than your actual brain. Ancient travellers trusted their gut not in the inspirational quote way, but literally. If their stomach clenched, tightened, or suddenly felt wrong, they changed direction. Not because of magic, but because the enteric nervous system, your gut's weirdly powerful mini-brain, reacts to environmental threats before your conscious mind catches on. Early humans noticed patterns. Walking toward a predator's territory, their gut twisted. Approaching unstable ground or thin ice, same thing. Moving into unfamiliar territory where the air pressure, temperature, or scent profile shifted. The gut fired an alert like a panicked squirrel hitting every alarm button. Modern science eventually confirmed this creepy phenomenon. Your gut is loaded with sensory neurons that respond to sounds, vibrations, and chemical cues your conscious brain never registers. It's constantly scanning for danger like a paranoid security guard doing laps in your torso. And here's the kicker. Elite survivalists, trackers, and even some soldiers still rely on this sensation. They call it somatic sensing. But really, it's just paying attention when your digestive system starts having an emotional breakdown. You've probably felt it before, that sudden drop, that backup slowly tension, or that invisible push to stay away from a place that seems harmless. That's not anxiety. Well, sometimes it is. But sometimes it's your prehistoric danger detector quietly saving your life. Think of it as your built-in compass, except instead of pointing north, it points away from death. Number 2. Bone barometers. Imagine waking up one morning and your knee starts acting like it's auditioning for a horror movie. Stiff, achy, strangely dramatic. Modern, you blames bad sleep or maybe that one stair you tripped on last week. But for most of human history, people took this seriously. Bones weren't just bones, they were weather sensors. A change in joint pain meant storms, pressure drops, or dangerous cold fronts were on the way. Basically, your skeleton was the original Weather Channel, minus the cheerful graphics. Here's the wild part. This wasn't superstition. Your joints really do respond to atmospheric pressure. When pressure drops before a storm, the tissues around your joints expand slightly, irritating nerves and triggering pain or stiffness. Ancient herders, sailors, and nomads used this reaction to decide when to travel, when to shelter, and when to stop pretending the sky didn't look suspiciously angry. Survival records from cultures all over the world mention this ability. Old injuries especially were like screaming emergency sirens. If someone with a healed fracture said, "My leg hurts," everyone packed up camp because the weather was about to go full apocalypse mode. And yes, this still works. Plenty of outdoor workers, hikers, and soldiers notice it without realizing they're using a Bronze Age survival mechanism. Your bones don't lie. They complain loudly, dramatically, and with perfect timing. So if your joints ever feel weird right before bad weather hits, congratulations, you and a medieval goat herder have the same built-in survival feature. Number 1. The smoke listener. Imagine you're standing in an open field with a fire burning nearby. You're not watching the flames. You're not checking the wind. You're staring at the smoke the way it tilts, coils, bends, or suddenly drops, like it just remembered gravity exists. Ancient people read smoke like a survival newspaper, and it told them everything. Approaching storms, predators nearby, air pressure shifts, even enemy movement. Basically, smoke was the original push notification, except it didn't vibrate, it just swayed ominously. Different cultures had different interpretations, but the principle was universal. Rising smoke in a straight column meant stable air and safe conditions. Smoke flattening or wobbling. Something was moving in your immediate environment, and if the smoke suddenly hugged the ground like a clingy cat, that meant danger, usually a rapid temperature inversion or silent wind shift that could carry fire straight toward your face. And here's the creepy science behind it. Smoke particles are insanely sensitive to microcurrents in the air, far more sensitive than human skin. Ancient hunters used this to avoid ambushes. Soldiers used it to monitor enemy approach, and villagers used it to predict sudden weather shifts long before meteorology was a thing. Even today, firefighters, survivalists, and some military units still read smoke behaviour because it remains one of the fastest indicators of environmental change. Your eyes just have to pay attention. It's weird, ancient, and works disturbingly well, a survival trick delivered by air, decoded by instinct. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.